feel like Facebook didn't used to be as bad. I think about you and I'm like, okay, is any of this even real, or are we just in a simulation on Facebook now where it's all just pumping out misinformation?
I love that like I'm a voice in your head now when you look
Yeah.
at social media. I've had a few people tell me that, and I think that's a start.
Welcome back, everybody, to the Gold Standard Podcast. Today, we are super excited. We are joined by Dr. Liza Geonie. She is a BCBA, a doctor, and a certified badass. So, Dr. Liza, please tell us about yourself. How did you get in the field, and where do you see yourself going in the future?
Hi, so glad to be here. God, I mean, I've been in the field for almost 30 years. I've been a BCBA for 18 years,
Okay.
almost 19 years. So yeah, it's been a long journey here in this field. I started off the way most people start off working in a school with kids with autism. I was kind of just, I just kind of stumbled into a program that was doing
Yeah.
ABA, and I just kind of took to it. I was newly out of college. I didn't know what I was doing with myself. So I fell in love with the field. And then as most people do, they decide this is what I'm going to be doing. So I went
Yep.
back, I got my master's, and then eventually got my PhD. Just actually last year, I think I'm like just hit my like year anniversary of
Yay.
defending my dissertation. Yeah, it's crazy how that goes. So I started off I feel like my number one love is always working with individuals with autism. I've worked with all ages. But I got to the point after doing this for so long, I wrote my thesis on mindfulness strategies for people with autism. And as much as I love the field, when I got to my dissertation, all my professors were saying, like, pick something that you won't like that you love because you're going to be so sick of it by
Yeah.
the time you're done with it. So I was thinking, all right, I've been in this field a long time. Not that I'm sick of it, but I was definitely looking, I was doing more behavior analysis as opposed to applied behavior analysis as my program, which looks at how to apply these strategies, not just with the individuals that we work with, but more in a global,
Yeah.
way in society and communities. So I
The
was already
everyday life.
doing yeah, like more of just like, like what B.F. Skinner said about behavior analysis, like saving the world and changing the world, right? Like that's sort of where, we all kind of were in this program looking to see where we could apply behavior analysis to things outside of like the developmental world. And it just so happens I was already thinking that way. And I got accepted into my program February of 2020.
Hmm.
Wow.
And in
Perfect
May of
timing.
2020, that's when the program started. So as you can
Yep.
imagine what was going on. And I just got fascinated. Obviously, it was just the height of the pandemic, just the beginning of the pandemic. But I was really fascinated at all of the not just the news and information that was going out on especially social media, but just
Mhm.
how people were reacting to it and consuming it. And it just really what I thought they were falling for some really crazy theories and just things that you're like, how could anybody believe this is true? How could anybody
Yeah.
believe some of these things are true? And then I was thinking, all right, well, that's behavior. I mean, social media behavior is behavior. Let me see if that's something that I could study in my program. And I'm really, it was interesting because I was really the only person in my program. And I feel like one of the few behavior analysts who really look at misinformation from this
Yeah.
behavior analytic lens. And it surprises me because it's so, talk about socially valid. This is
Yeah.
everywhere. Social
It's prevalent.
media, it's so prevalent, and just how all we're doing is consuming information online, even if you don't have Facebook or X
Yeah.
or Instagram or TikTok or all the other ones. But we're still, I mean, everybody is still scrolling and getting their information online through news apps, through people saying, "Hey, did you hear about something happening here, and then you look it up online really quickly. So we're all consuming at a very rapid rate news and information. And I feel that this is so relevant to anybody in this field. And that's my goal is to make this something that's so relevant that this becomes something that behavior analysts take on as part of their work. How do we, I mean, I know that behavior analysts are looking at behavior analysis and like misinformation regarding the field itself. I know there's a
Yeah.
lot of discussion about that, but just I
But the
think in
broader
terms,
spectrum of like, let's apply it to the information we take in as human
yeah,
beings. Yeah.
yes, yeah,
Which
and
honestly, like when you first told us about your dissertation, um, it was such a unique and like very individualized thing that I was like, damn. Literally just today, I read something that was wrong and I knew it was wrong, but my brain was like, oh wow, that's crazy.
Yeah. I feel like it's more so now. Like the amount of things I scroll, I feel like Facebook didn't used to be as bad, but it's
Yeah.
like everything now. It's like my friends don't exist on Facebook. It's just
Drama.
I don't even know what, like
Yeah.
news and drama and a story about this and a story about that. And
Yeah.
then it makes me question. I think about you and I'm like, okay, is any of this even real? Or are we just in a simulation on Facebook now where it's all just pumping out misinformation?
first of all, I love that like I'm a voice in your head now when you look
Yeah.
at social media. I've had a few people tell me that, and I think that's a start. And not, I don't want to be this like annoying hounding voice,
Yeah.
but I feel like it's really important that people do have that voice, right? That so sort of like because we're all in the field, we work with people with autism, right? It's a generalized kind of skill that I'm starting to see with
Yeah.
people, right? Because we're like, I don't want this individual that I'm working with to engage in this skill just because I have that reinforcer and I'm setting the contingencies up, and the environment up for them to do it. I want them to be able to go off and be able to engage in this skill when I'm not around, when the
Yeah.
reinforcer, this extrinsic reinforcer isn't around. So that's what I'm hoping, we do as behavior analysts is that if we just all kind of take on this work, maybe we could start to put this message out there so that people do generalize those skills. So, have fun. Scroll. I doom scroll more than probably most people, first thing in the morning. It's
It's your
bad.
job.
It's my job. That's how I try to like I would say I need to do this. It's my job.
Yeah.
But also, it's just mindless consumption sometimes that we just at the end of the day or before we get out of bed, right? But
Yeah.
like as if we have this understanding and this voice in our heads of just be careful when we're doing this because we can
Mm.
fall victim as careful as I am, I actually shared something and I realized it pretty quickly, but I shared something recently that was an AI video.
Mm.
Yeah.
And I was thinking, oh my God, this is so it's so funny because I reacted so quickly. And I was like, I didn't even know about this. I never heard. Wow, this is really cool. And I shared it. And then I think I read a comment on the video after I shared, which is sometimes, sort of like when you check a text after you send it and you realize you said something wrong, like you do that edit
Yeah.
after. I mean, we do it all the time. And I was like, damn, I'm the one that's always going on about this. And I'm still, that automatic response, right? That automatic like, wow, I like this. It aligns with what I believe in. It was a
Mhm.
little bit of wish fulfillment of like, oh, I'm so glad this is happening. I would love to see more of this, that I didn't stop to look, I didn't take that extra minute until after I shared. And luckily, it was a story. I posted it on my story, so I was able to get rid of it quickly before anybody even like saw it. But when, I realized how quickly I responded, it's always making me aware of how bad this is,
Yeah.
because yeah, and how easy it is to share. So yeah, it's something that, I feel like, I've done so much reading and research on this, and I feel, you know, at the end of the day, by design, social media platforms are not there for, like I was just watching, I haven't watched it in its entirety. And the other night, I decided to put it on, but the Social Dilemma, remember that documentary that came out,
Mm.
Social
Yeah, yeah.
Dilemma? And in Social Dilemma, and also in books I'm reading Surveillance Capitalism finally. But they keep saying like if you don't know what the product is, if something is free and you don't know what the product is you. You know, like
Mm.
when you're not like,
Yeah.
because right, because social media is free, you know, we have full access to it. So what we're the ones that are being sold, right? Because as we've talked about this before, as you're scrolling on your social media feed, right? You're like, oh, there's a cute dog, there's somebody else's cute dog, you know, because obviously I'm a big dog person, but like, you know, I'm like, oh, wow, I was Googling like, you know, face moisturizer and this one looks cool. Like, and this just pops up on my feed, right? Like
Yep.
a dog harness, you know, different things. Like it's because of my Google searches, right? And the things that I respond to on social media, the algorithm, which it sounds so evil, it's like this algorithm is watching us and monitoring everything that we are clicking on and engaging with, and then designing posts and ads that
Yeah.
we are going to continue to engage with. Because at the end of the day, that's what social media is a big money maker, right? So
Yeah.
Yeah.
any engagement,
And it's all based
any,
off of like that behavioral history. Like, what are we engaging in?
yes.
What are we clicking on? What are we commenting on? Without realizing, again, like this all boils down to ABA and observation. But
Hmm.
again, like you could be talking about a dog harness, looking up dog harnesses, talking to your friends about a dog harness, and then you go to scroll and
There it is.
there it is, dog harness.
There's that perfect dog harness that I was
Yep.
looking
Yeah.
for. It's sometimes cool, you know, because I'm like, great, thank you, you know, Instagram for saving me some time, you know, like this is the perfect harness I'm looking for. But sometimes I'm like, wow, like, you know, I'm so again, it's very interesting because you can kind of connect it to how we look at things as behavior analysts, but we ourselves are predictable, right?
Yeah.
Mm.
Our behavior is being monitored, our environment is being modified and set up for certain behaviors to occur because we're predictable beings. They know what
Yeah.
the reinforcers are. They're seeing it all the time by what you're Googling, what you're engaging with. You know, just even it monitors. So I'm reading, I mentioned it, Shoshana Zuboff. She's sort of like, she wrote the Bible about surveillance capitalism. It's a big
Mm.
book.
Hmm.
And I've actually made some headway into it because it's not like a book you can lay down and like read at the end of the night because it's not, you know, it's not a
It's
page
like
turner.
walking stick. Yeah.
But there's so much to it. And she goes into the history
Yeah.
of Google. Like Google, what I found was really interesting was that they were, you know, Google was like developed just to be a search engine, like Ask Jeeves. I don't know if you guys remember,
Hmm.
like,
Yep.
Yep.
you know, there was
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
you just went on the internet. You weren't like, I'm gonna Google this. You're like, I'm gonna look this up on the internet. You know, you would and everybody would have their own search engine. You'd go into Yahoo, you'd go into Ask Jeeves, you'd go into Dogpile. I remember there were so many when I first, you know, started using the internet. And but Google became like the main one because they started to realize they started to use their data in ways that made them kind of rise to the top because they were like, there's all this free information that we have on people that we're not even using. How
Yeah.
could
Mm.
we make this something that's usable and helpful? You know, because they went from like, how do we help the consumer, right? To more of how do we help the capitalist, you know, like machine of selling and giving people information that they're able to then use to be sold to and be marketed to. And
Yeah.
so it was really fascinating. I'm like really giving like the bare bones, like, you know, from this book.
No, that's
But
okay.
but I find that like, you know, it's, you know, we're always not to sound like we're, you know, not to be like, let's be paranoid and like Big Brother's watching us, but like we are being watched and monitored and we're being sold
Yeah.
to. And then when you're on social media, like again, I'm always like looking to see what stories keep coming up on Facebook for me.
Mm.
And we are in like dark times. We are in some
Yeah.
dark right now. I mean, like
And it's funny too, because uh, for our listeners, we actually had met with Dr. Liza once before and did a whole pod. Um, and it kind of got scrapped, and we're here again. But the last time that we spoke about some really good stuff, and honestly, again, like voice in my head, it kind of connected the dots in an analytic way. Like these apps work together in almost like an IOA way, where it's like you have Facebook, who's like, for a lot of people, that's their main information source. And then you have Instagram that's almost like IOA, like, hey, can I actually say that they're really into this, or is it the dog leash? And then they kind of like bounce back and forth. So depending on like the algorithm of one, it'll change the algorithm of the other. And then we get that
Yes,
behavioral history of like, what are you clicking on? What are you engaging in on one? And then it changes the format of the other one. So
absolutely.
it is really funny to think about and to like dive into that lens of like this is still all behavior.
Yeah.
At the end of the day,
Yeah.
this is all still behavior. Um,
It's
which
they rely on that. They rely on our behavior to
Mhm.
pay all of, like because again, it's free, right? But people are monetizing on our posts and our interactions and our
yeah,
engagement. So they need that engagement, So yeah,
yeah.
it's
And I want to take us back a little bit
sure.
for our viewers who might not know exactly what your dissertation is on.
Oh yeah.
So your dissertation, and like I want you to take over and explain a little bit more, but your dissertation was more of like a fine-tuned way of doing behavioral contracts essentially with people about truth telling or
Well,
essentially opting out
Truth
if
sharing.
truth sharing, sorry, truth sharing.
yes.
But I want you to take over and kind of tell us like, from the beginning, like your dissertation, how did you get to that idea and what is it?
Gotcha. Okay, yeah. So you touched on it, but it's let me see if I remembered from the top of my head. It's the implementation of pre-commitment and direct instruction to
Hmm.
reduce the spread of misinformation on social media. That's the I think I'm always looking it up, and I think I got it. I think
Yeah.
that's my actual title. And so all right, so going back to 2020, when I was just like,
Mhm.
what is going on? And I was reaching out to so many different professors in my program, and they really didn't know. I mean, they were brilliant and smart, but they really didn't know how to work with me to make this behavior analytic. So it took a little while for me. I finally found um my chair, who was phenomenal, Dr. Ray, Tyler Ray. He was incredible. A little shout out to him. He really, he really was able to just streamline and look at like, he's like, "Oh, okay, well, this is really about, again, he's like at the end of the, because I kept on saying it's so hard to make this behavioral. He goes, no, it's fine. It's behavior, and we will figure out a
Yeah.
way of making this observable and measurable. So one of the things we were talking about was, different strategies to that are already in the research that changes behavior. So one of the strategies was pre-commitment or pledging. So
Yeah.
this came from there is somebody, his name is Dr. Gleb Sipersky, and he wrote a book called or like he wrote research, and I think he made it into a book called Pro-Truth Pledge. And what he did was he developed like a pledge that mostly like I want to say like politicians and people who are, more out in the public to take a pledge that they're only going to post information and stories that have been verified and double checked. So
Right.
they filled out this pledge, and if they make a mistake, they also come out and publicly say, "Oops, my bad. I shared this." But it actually turns out that it was false or not fully accurate. So that was one piece to it. So mine had two phases. So I had only three participants. It was hard to get participants for this. It's hard to get participants anyway for a study, but
How how
I
long, I don't mean to cut you off, but how long was the commitment for each participant?
so it really more of it. It was funny because they kept on reaching out to me. They're like, "What should I be doing?" I'm like, "Nothing." Like,
Yeah.
Um, a lot of it was me observing. So what they had to do was
Yeah.
they had to agree to friend me and my research assistant. We had like weren't engaging. Didn't even have a picture. Like it was like a real like anonymous profile. So once they agreed to participate in the study, they would friend us. And then I looked at their previous, just to look to see any reactivity of just being, part of a study. I looked at, I want to say there 4 weeks of posts to see what, so the criteria was they obviously had to be over 18 and they had to post at least one story a day already, like on their profile, not
Mhm.
like as a story that goes away, but like once, like, so they were reading a news story and would post it on their, in which a lot of people do. Like a lot of people use their Facebook to share news that's going on in the
Yeah.
world, that relates to them. So I looked back at their posts, what they were sharing, and had a measurement system that looked to see like if it's fulfilled certain criteria, like was it recent, was it were people who what type of people were interviewed for this, were people interviewed,
Yeah.
even like, like this woman like posted like, bees are dying at this rate, like if there was nothing that backed up that source, that also got measured. And so it had to be at least 80% of a in order to be qualified as a reputable source. So
Yeah.
I modified a checklist that the acronym is CRAP, which is very funny. Everybody goes, and it was actually purposely given that. I want to say the name, the woman, she was a librarian, Amanda Blakely or Sarah Blakely. I'm sorry if I'm not attributing it to the right name, but she developed this. She was a librarian, and it's currency. So is it timely?
Mhm.
Relevance? Is it important to like what's going on? I mean, that's also kind of subjective.
Yeah.
Authority, meaning like who put this source out, who's behind the source, accuracy, and purpose. So again, the it was hard because these are still can be seen as subjective. So I had sort of like a checklist that I created that had a point system and that certain criteria met for current and relevant and like authority and then I had the IOA, the my research assistant who was looking to see if this is if we were, kind of agreeing on the
Yeah.
percentage levels. So then that there was that. And then I had everybody sign this pledge saying I agree to verify my sources before sharing, and then we continue to measure their posts for the next 2 weeks. And sorry, my son's texting me, asking for money, always. So then the next, so then after 2 weeks, they had to take I made a 5 module training like series of videos
Mhm.
where I went through, I kind of went, it's direct instruction, but direct instruction really has to be in person. So it was like kind of based on direct instruction models. And it was going into different aspects of how you consume news. So I went into bias and sensationalistic headlines and AI and even parody. Because, sometimes people are looking at an Onion article and they're thinking, oh my God, this is real. Like in this, how could this be true or whatever. In
Yeah.
this day and age, it's hard to look at certain headlines and not think, me, is this a parody? But
Hmm.
how
Yeah.
to differentiate what is parody versus what is an actual news story, and also looking for like how we look at trying to think what else was it. There was different like how like certain words that will skew like so like in a headline, this outstanding, situation or this horrible, like whatever, and they're biased, they're using different kinds of words that already skew how we're going to consume that news article. So
Yeah.
I go into all of those strategies and how to recognize it and how to pause. But the biggest thing that I focused on was a strategy by this man, Michael Caulfield, who is a researcher in misinformation and information science, where it's called SIFT, that's the acronym, and it's stop, investigate the source, find better sources, and trace to the original. So that acronym I remember. SIFT. So it's SIFT's 4 steps. Like, boy, my brain is not working today. It's 4 steps. And when you're sharing something, right? So it's you have to stop, right? When you're scrolling through your social media feed and you're going, oh wow, I want to share this source. This means a lot to me. Instead of just clicking that share, I'm asking people in my who were my participants to stop and take these like 4 steps. And you have to now go away from your Facebook or your Instagram and open up another website and look things up. So as you can imagine, there's a big response effort
Yeah.
Yeah.
that when you that people did not really sign up for when they signed up for being on social media, right? People are not signing up for more work. In fact, people go on social media a lot of the time to get away from having to do anything that's like productive or
Yeah.
Yeah.
it's a time kill a lot of the time. So my dissertation was really fascinating. The research was interesting, but it was also, I was disappointed. I kept on telling my chair, I don't think these strategies are going to work. I don't think they're going to work. I don't think this is going to work. And he kept on saying, that's great. That's wonderful. He was great. He really kept me focused and positive, even when I was watching my strategies kind of tank,
Yeah.
because he was saying this is telling us more information about what is needed in terms of intervening on this level. And
Mhm.
it was an optimistic way at looking at how my strategies just, and not that they didn't work, it's like any, it's so funny. I know you guys are also like into like what, healthy lifestyle and exercise and fitness, right? So you see everybody like January, right? They hit it hard. They go to the gym like
Yep.
every day, right? So if somebody were taking data on like their workouts or their gym, right, you would see that like spike. And then you would see everything kind of go back to like kind of baseline and
Yeah.
that's sort of what was happening, right? You make like this commitment, I'm going to do this thing, new year, new me. I signed this pre-commitment form. I've taken these, strategies. So I did see like a little spike, but then it went back to like sort of what they always do.
Mm.
And
Yeah.
so I was a little disappointed, but it makes sense, right? It makes sense. So we looked at a lot of like in my discussion, a lot on like response effort and how there's a lot of research in autism and developmental research that when something takes a lot to do, like it's a lot of response effort, there's actually a punishing effect to it, which makes
Yeah.
sense, right? Because you're not going to
Yeah.
engage in a behavior that is hard to do, is a lot more effort to do. So, it's a big ask to tell people, when you're scrolling on Facebook, do more work, before you share something,
Yeah. Because that
So
immediate impulse is like, oh, this is totally true. I align with this. I'm gonna share it.
yeah.
Hmm.
Yes. I mean, it's funny
Yeah.
because, like I said, I experienced that myself. I was like, oh, wow, this is great, And I was like, oh, wow,
Yeah.
what did I
And
do?
I
I'm the
think
voice in everybody's head,
the
right?
most interesting thing about your dissertation is like the dangers on different levels. So, when we're scrolling through and we're looking at like dogs or like a cool restaurant or something like that, and we share it out. And if it's like, hey, come to this restaurant in New Jersey, but it's actually in Delaware, okay,
Right. Low
it's
stakes.
no harm, no
Yeah.
foul type of thing. But
Yeah.
when it's like a bigger scale and we get into like political sides or anything that might be like more triggering and you share misinformation that way, that's when we
Yeah.
get into really dangerous territory where, again, like as an analyst, we also have to look at our own behavior. Like, was that correct for me to share out, or should I have done my research before just saying this?
Yeah. And that's what it is. I mean, it's like low stakes stuff, like, oops, my bad, that restaurant was not, in
Yeah.
that state that I said, or or it closed up. Sorry, guys, I didn't realize it,
Yes.
right?
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
when it's the problem is that we're dealing with, every time you share something that is higher stakes, and especially in this day and age, where we're in a politically, tumultuous time in
Hmm.
history. I think probably I think this is going to go down in history as a very politically, if, again, I'm trying to be optimistic, if we make it to the point where we
Yeah.
can have this in a history book, but I don't want to get too into my own pessimism here. But like it's, you have to be so careful about what you're contributing
Hmm.
the
Yeah.
to the just the, there's it's becoming like a wasteland, like a toxic dump of just people contributing to like, like another, piece of garbage in the hemisphere of the internet. So like,
Yeah.
I think of again, I feel I try to connect it to, researchers in behavior analysis, and Sigrid Glenn is really interesting because she talks a lot about, and I'm not going to say that I'm like a professional on what Sigrid Glenn has said, because I find it's very, like, she's so brilliant and it's a lot, but she talks about meta-contingencies, and I've been trying to tie in like interlocking behavior contingencies and meta-contingencies,
Hmm.
and I'm trying to tie in how it, because she was writing about this before I mean, the internet was maybe around. It was like the 80s and 90s, but before like social media became like the sludge that it is now. And but like how everybody's individual behavior contributes to like a larger system.
Yeah.
Mm.
So you think, all right, what's the big deal? So I posted this mistruth, or this accidental misinformation about an immigrant, like something, something like that. What's the big deal? People will figure it out or whatever. I don't really care, but like if everybody's doing that, and sometimes it's by accident, sometimes it's purposeful, but it contributes to this growing
Yeah.
problem of people. First of all, there's so much, I'm jumping into so many things, so sorry, let me know if I'm going
No,
too
it's fine.
fast. But like there's also illusory truth, the illusory truth, where we see the same things over and over again,
Mm.
and we start to believe it's true,
Yeah.
because it's like, wow, I keep seeing this information. And, we could try to filter it out and say, oh, this has been debunked. Like, let's even like vaccines, right? This has been debunked. This has been disproven. But yet these stories are still out there. I still keep hearing about this. Maybe there is something to this. Maybe there is some truth to this. Or you hear people just say, and I think I mentioned this when we first met, I heard blah, 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 right? I heard
Yeah.
something happened. And then when you start to ask, well, where did you hear it? Oh, I don't know. Like I read it on Facebook. Well, who said it? Oh, I don't know. Like they don't have like they can't remember who or where or why they consumed this. But it's
Yeah.
this, oh, I heard, right? So now they're contributing to this general zeitgeist of information that is being kicked around, that people kind of heard about, but nobody has any real
Hmm.
basis
Mm.
for where it came from. And so that's happening all the time. And the more we hear these, like, oh, I heard this, but I'm not sure if it's true, but whatever, I heard it. So maybe, maybe like the people don't have a lot of accountability in what they're sharing, but they're putting it out there. And
Yeah.
that's happening all the time on social media. And so it becomes this aggregate product that keeps us engaged and sustains us every time we're on social media.
Yeah. It
Um,
fuels the fire
we're
a little bit
contributing.
too.
What's that?
It fuels the fire. So it's like, oh, I
Yeah.
just
Oh,
posted about
absolutely.
this and here it is again. I'm seeing it again. It's got to be true. Like,
Right. And now it's in your algorithm and now
yeah.
that's all you see.
Yes. And
Yeah.
that's the aggregate product. So like when Sigrid Glenn talks about meta-contingencies, she's talking about different kinds of things, but when I think about it from a social media perspective, but that's what it is. It's that every time you post, right? It's sort of like every time you search, every time you post, there's something there that leads you to something that's related because of the algorithm.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And it links you to like I get, and I think we talked about this too. I get like the weirdest like pages I don't follow or people I don't follow. And then all of a sudden they're showing up on my feed and they're talking about things that matter to me. But I'm like,
Yeah.
who is this person? Like, what is this group?
Yeah.
Sometimes
Where did
like
it come
it's
from? How did they get this information? What's their source?
yeah, or like, why is it showing up on my feed? Sometimes
Right.
Yeah.
it's like, like I looked up something and it's like the crocheting, crocheters of America. Like I never crocheted before. Why am I getting something where they're talking about like something that's going on in the world? Like it's
Yeah.
very strange. Like everything is showing up in my feed that's related to a topic that I engaged with or talked about
Yeah.
or searched. It's very weird. And so that's something that we're also
And in a
up
way too,
against.
like the internet and our scrolling is a little bit like free operant. So it's like here's all of these toys and all of these ideas and all of these interests. What are you going to play with? What are
Yeah.
you going to
Well,
engage in? And then it kind of picks up. But then I also feel like certain times it almost like refreshes and redistributes. So it's like, okay, you picked your top preferences, but now 6 months down the line, it's like I don't know much about soccer, and now I'm seeing videos about soccer. It's like,
right.
okay,
And it's funny that you
sure.
say that because what I was saying when I was talking about my dissertation, I had to create a new Facebook account that
Yeah,
like so that didn't have my, a picture or anything. It was just so I could observe my participants. And the first day or two that I had the account, it was empty. And then all like my feed was empty because I had no friend. The only friends I had were the people that I was following and
yeah,
my research assistant. And then all of a sudden, like it was like trying to throw me a line. It was like news stories started showing up, like
Mhm.
content started showing up, random things that I would never engage with. And then I didn't engage with it. And then it would change. It was like, well, what about this? Are you into
yeah,
like nature? And I didn't engage with it. Are you into animals? Are you into like, and then it got into politics and like it started just throwing content onto my feed, desperate to see what I was going to engage with
yeah,
and
Hmm.
click on it. So that was really because I mean, I had Facebook when it first started, so it was Facebook was very different.
When all you
So
saw was your friend stuff and not
yeah,
yeah,
all
it
these
was
famous
literally
people.
I mean, I don't know if you guys had Facebook at that time, but like it was a very different, it was all, everything was just like on one page. You didn't
Yeah.
have
yeah,
like a feed. You didn't have like really, you would just have to go into other friends' pages to see what they were up to. And most of the time we were just playing these like weird like Facebook games with each other where we
Yeah.
were like
yeah,
vampires and
yeah.
werewolves and zombies. Like that was pretty much all Facebook was, and
It
it
was just
was
a
like,
MySpace upgrade.
yeah, yeah, it was a MySpace upgrade. And like people would like, like just post their food and like, like really stupid like things you didn't care about at all. And people
Yeah,
still do kind of do that, but like it was a very different. So it's become like a, and if you think about like not only has Facebook become such a different thing, but like everything is following that Facebook model where you can comment and
Yeah.
where you can like and where you can
hmm,
react. I mean, even on Spotify, you can comment on podcasts now. I don't know if you know that.
Oh,
Yeah, and
interesting.
you can
did
react
not.
and you can respond. Yeah, people can comment on everything right now. So like that model is everywhere. And I'm thinking, you know, why? Right? And I feel it's because other platforms are seeing this opportunity for engagement,
Yeah.
not because they care about what we think, right? But because it connects them to what we are purchasing and consuming. And, this is all we're doing is, and again, I'm a part of it. I haven't, like some people have deleted their stuff. I certainly haven't. I'm still very involved and engaged, but like I try to be very aware of what I'm engaging with.
Yeah.
Mm.
I imagine sort of like people who like work with like snakes, like, poisonous snakes, right? Like, or like alligators, or, they are very aware. They respect the danger of what they're engaging with, but they don't stop engaging because it serves something for them. So I
Yeah.
feel that's the same thing with kind of social media is,
100%. And like for me, I think it all boils down to on like the micro scale of it and each individual person's behavior as BCBAs and RBTs. It's really important for us to engage in sharing what we believe is honest and true and backed up, especially when it comes to our clients who we serve and our parent training, because I, I can speak for both of us. We lost track of how many times a parent has said like, "Oh, but I saw this on Facebook and I really wanted to, oh, but one of my friends is doing this
Yeah,
and I want to try it." And it's like, okay,
Right.
so then it kind of becomes a little bit part of the analyst job to then redistribute
right.
and say, absolutely, we can 100% do that, but here's what else this can lead to.
Right. Like again, like how, but the thing, because the first thing people say, right, when somebody says, I read about this or I want to try this, especially in the field that we're in, we always say immediately, it's like this umbrella term, do your research, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
And we always say that, do your research. People um say it, I did my research, right? When they're posting things, I did my research, right? But then we have to also work with people on what does that mean? What does, again, like
Yeah.
operationally defining, like what does doing your research mean? Does it mean finding everything you can find on TikTok? Does it mean finding somebody who's talking about it on YouTube? Does
yeah,
it mean, or does it mean looking at, like resources that are backed by science, backed
yeah,
by some kind of evidence? Um, and the thing is that, and also it means, are we just cherry picking what we want to agree with and what is proving our point, or are we looking to see what might be countering that or what might not fully support that?
right,
So it's uncomfortable. It's uncomfortable for me when I um feel strongly about something and now I want to try to prove it. I want to try, but then I also want to make sure that I'm not, in just, this I'm not confirmation biased, right? I'm not looking
Mm.
something up just to prove my point. I have to now, step out of my comfort zone and find things that oppose it and that
yeah.
contradict it, that are also
And
evidence-based,
yeah, that's
Yeah,
tough too, because even when we talk about articles in ABA, if they don't abide by the seven dimensions, they can't technically be considered behavior analytic in nature. So a lot
yeah,
of times we could read an amazing article that might have, 10 great strategies, but that if they don't meet the other dimensions, we can't say, oh, this is 100% true and it's backed by science and we're going to follow it. A lot of times with our, what we see on social media, and again, that bigger scale that we apply ABA to is you can find that same information maybe on YouTube and maybe on TikTok, but then when you go to the other four sources that you might want, um, it's
Yeah.
not there. So just
right.
one or two sources, I feel like doesn't do it anymore. We kind of need like the full, uh, I don't know, like the full list of like, all right, well, here's it on the internet, here's it on TikTok, here's it on YouTube, here's it on every meta platform, before we can absolutely go back out and say, yeah, no, that's true. Dogs have gills.
Right, right. And that's the thing is that like we signed up for in this field to do that kind of work in our everyday lives. We do
Yeah.
it in our professional lives, but it just obviously we were
Carries
drawn
over.
to it because it speaks to us. We're like, we like this, but then you're asking somebody who maybe, and again, like just somebody who is just feeling very passionate politically about a
Mm.
specific topic, and we're going to ask them now to find all these other sources, like move away from this story that you were so attached to, and now find
Yeah.
alternate views and find things that contradict it, and look for, evidence that goes against what you fundamentally believe. That's a big ask. It's a big
Yeah.
ask.
Yeah.
And I was once I was watching this woman, I want to say she's Nancy Pelosi's and again I could get this wrong, but I want to say it's Nancy Pelosi's daughter or something. She did a documentary on I think she did a documentary on um the January 6th, insurrection, like the insurrectionists. And I think she either met with them or like their families or people who were like related to them. And she was speaking on, I want to say Bill Maher or one of those, and she kept on saying, which was really interesting. She's like, you have to understand when they open up their social media accounts, it's very different than your social media account.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's yeah, so like, and I think I got to find this documentary and watch it because it seems like she humanizes, the people that were involved in this mindset and the insurrection, which again, we're all humans here. We're all humans having human experiences. So I think she wanted to show the human side of these people who are very angry and upset and destructive and got to know them and talk with them. And she discussed that this is a part of what's feeding a lot of their belief systems. They are, again, they're searching on the internet for things, right? It connects to their social media accounts, it connects to all their social media accounts. And this is what they're consuming, and they're not going beyond that. We talk about echo chambers a lot,
Yeah.
of like just people feeding you back like your own beliefs, when people join Facebook groups, that
Hmm.
becomes like an enclosed it's a verbal community, right? We're all we join a Facebook group, right? On,
Yeah.
I'm a Pelotoner, right? So I belong to not just Peloton groups, but like Peloton mom groups and Peloton
Mm.
dog, groups. I mean, like I belong in very niche, right? Very niche groups. And we all, have the same vocabulary. We all have the same like kind of just culturally, we're all in the same place. We talk about, we might mention like, oh, I took Cody's class yesterday, right? Like everybody, we don't have to go Cody, like we all know who we're talking about just by the first name, right? We all have like this like lingo and these players that we all like connect with. And this is like our verbal community. It's our jargon, it's our lingo. So all these people who have whatever belief systems that they have and living, whatever worldviews that they have groups that are supporting that. And it becomes your verbal community
Yeah.
that feeds into it. So that all, it all that and that's people's lives, right? People wake up, they go onto Facebook, they go to
Hmm.
work, they come home, or they go, their lunch break, they're going to Facebook. I'm just using, it could be Truth Social, it could be different ones, but they're and then they go to bed, they scroll, they turn it off, they wake up, it's repeat, rinse, repeat. That's what they are engaging with, and so everything is going to fall into place to support that. So
Yeah.
that's what we're up
And with
against.
with all that being known, what was the end result for the study? Did your participants find that they were not cut out for the research, or did they, end up more mindful?
One woman, I remember it was very interesting, and it just so happens I didn't plan it this way. I had three participants. One was very much on the left, one was very much on the right, like politically, and one
Mm.
was sort of like in the middle. And I was like, oh, good. Like this gave a good, and I feel like the one, and again, just the everybody posted their fair amount of misinformation, in whatever areas. One woman who actually fell in the middle, she started with her posts like to go, not sure if this is true, but I saw this and figured I would share. Like she kind of gave like a little caveat.
Yeah.
Okay.
Um, yeah. And then one person messaged me. They didn't like my modules because again, it was direct instruction, so part of it was repeating things.
Mm,
And he was like, it was so redundant and this and that. But that was sort of the model of teaching. I don't think it didn't seem to affect him too much with his posts. I think he was an older gentleman, and I think he was going to continue to post what he wanted to post. So I don't think it really affected him.
Yeah.
Um, Overall, I saw some slight changes, but I think again, it's, you know, social media, like everything else, is like a habit and it becomes a
yeah.
part
Yeah.
of your daily life habits. So I think you're gonna do what you do unless you make a mindful change. Uh, Not so much with them, but I'm noticing with a lot of people in general, people are just removing like the apps from their phones just to keep
Yeah.
them from just going on it so much. So I think people are taking different approaches to not just misinformation, but the habit of social media. And I think
Yeah.
also, where right now, social media is a different landscape than it was as we were talking about, like when we
Yeah.
first got on it. But also, I mean, again, I'm trying not to make this too political leaning, but I think anybody who's on social media can see what's going on right now in terms of the arguments and the disagreements that are going on with how things are, like we're seeing a lot of um violence on social media and people's
Yeah.
perceptions of where that violence is coming from, whether it's justified or warranted, right? People are in very different sides of the spectrum, but it is becoming stressful and it's becoming, like
Yeah.
it's not about like going on social media to look at your friends' kids and dogs anymore. You're
Right.
'cause- and if you
Yeah.
engage with that, you're getting more of that content, right? So if you were like, you said if you commented on something, now you're going to get tons of that. So now some people are just like bowing out completely and just saying, I'm taking a break from social media. I'm removing these apps from my phones, and they're trying to change how they engage by removing themselves completely, which is also
Yeah.
okay. But but it's still but I feel that like when the rational people start removing themselves from the social media space, then it sort of becomes even more Wild West. Like I feel like we
Yeah.
still should try our best to engage and keep some sanity and some, kind of keep some groundedness there. But
Right.
that's also a big ask for people to kind of go in there, and try to engage in a way that's skewing the algorithm in a better direction.
Yeah.
It does feel pretty hopeless. I'll say that.
A
I don't know
hundred
if I
percent.
answered
I'd
your
be curious to
question.
see I'd be curious to see the effects that it has on like generations that have grown up on social media versus people in our age bracket and above that didn't
Yeah.
always have social media.
Yeah.
Like we
That could
entered
be
the internet
really
at a
interesting.
time where we know what it was like and what it, how it's
Yes.
evolved versus someone coming in, entering it in this current landscape and
Yeah.
seeing like now this is all they know. Like I'd be curious what the difference is.
It's interesting because I have an 18-year-old son. He's home from college. He just came in when I was on here, but he he loves, I mean, like, first of all, he's a boy. I think not to be gender, put any gender norms out there, but I think, just if you looked at like just how different, like how boys versus girls, and again, not to be too gender normative, but like in general, how they engage with social media, right? It's going to be a little bit different. My son, we've had conversations about social media. He enjoys watching like TikTok videos and YouTube videos. He has a social media account. He barely engages with it. Once in a while, he'll like share something on a story. But he's told me, like, I just don't see the purpose. I don't see, like, it's,
Okay,
yeah, like
that's
he's
good
not.
news.
It is. And I feel like he's a very pragmatic person. I think he enjoys, the videos that are out there on the topics that are interesting to him, but he doesn't see the need to interact or engage with people on social media. And I'm wondering if that's most kids right now, maybe in his, he's a Gen Zer. I think I think they interact in the internet in different ways than we do. I mean, I'm older than you guys. I'm a Gen X person, so I'm a little bit of a different generation. So we got to see like the birth of this and kind of got really
Mm,
into it and how like interesting and cool it was. And now we're starting to see the other side of it of just how,
yeah.
how ugly and it can get. I read a really interesting book by somebody who's also a Gen Xer, who it's called It Came from Something Awful, and it goes into the whole evolution of 4chan and 8chan and all like the history of trolls and the
Hmm.
history
Hmm.
of and how that actually is connected to why social media is the way it is today, and even possibly connected to why our administration is popular right now
Hmm.
because of it's a really interesting book about how like just there was like a time with like just where trolls kind of became had their moment on the internet and still have their moments on the internet. We're in a still in a place where trolls are really taking over on social media and going into also, the bot farms, again, like I'm going into a lot of different areas
Yeah.
that are out of our control, but we haven't even scratched the surface on the fact that there are, a lot of the quote unquote trolls that are on the internet on social media are actually from Russia, and they're Russian bot farms where people are just there to incite um rage and
Yeah.
contribute to the rage baiting that's on social media. That's a whole
That's like a
other
whole separate
rock,
podcast.
Yeah. Yeah.
whole
We could do
separate
a whole
podcast.
hour
I
on
don't even want to,
Yeah.
that.
but but you just look at like how many tentacles that are, sort of like I just finished watching Stranger Things, like and like I don't know if you guys are into, but like all like the tentacles of like, and like Vecna was sort of like another product. He wasn't like the contributing factor. He was like another product of this like bigger thing that was going on
Yeah.
in the upside down, like I feel like wow, like we this is it's a weird upside down space, this whole internet that
Yeah.
we are engaging and interacting with. Not to get too geeky, but we it's we're it's a lot out there, and it's a lot to ask people to take that responsibility of changing the
Yeah.
trajectory. But
Yeah.
I still feel, and maybe I'm optimistic, but I still feel we're in a place where if enough people were to be smart about how they engage, we might be
Yeah.
able to make some headway. I think there's a reason why there's other social media platforms out there, um, because I think, people do want their echo chambers and they don't want other people meddling with how they're consuming information and news.
Mm.
But
Yeah.
I think
I
Yeah.
would
on the
agree.
ones that we are all engaging with, I think maybe, we could try to throw a monkey wrench into some of it.
Right.
Yeah.
As we are wrapping up here, I know you mentioned you're kind of out in your own ventures now. If you want to speak a little bit to, what you've been up to and what you're currently working on.
Okay. So, I always joke, like I'm like that person who's constantly cornering people at conferences, trying to get them to see how important this is. But like so it's starting to work. Like I'm working on an article with these two ladies, more on AI. I'm
Cool.
Cool.
starting to become just, but like they're doing a study, and I'm doing the literature review and the research gaps on stuff related to AI, but they're doing a study on teaching students with autism how to recognize AI generated comment content versus
Oh,
human
that's
generated
cool.
That's very
content. And
unique.
I know I got to look to see more of what they're doing because I kind of jumped on board just to help them with the research because I love that part, the research. But like I feel, neurotypical people could also benefit from seeing the difference between what's AI generated and what's human generated. So I'm working on that. I am going to be presenting at APBA, which is Association for Professional Behavior Analysts in Mardi Gras, not Mardi Gras, NOLA,
Ooh,
not during Mardi Gras. Sorry, my
Right,
brain
right,
is like I'm in NOLA mode in March. So it's not going to be during Mardi Gras, unfortunately, but it'll be in New
it's good
Orleans.
enough.
Yes. Are you guys going to San Francisco? I'm not going to San Francisco this year for the
I don't
for
think
ABAI.
so.
Not sure.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, I'm not sure. I don't think we are. I don't know if we have anyone presenting this year. If anything, maybe like our California team will be there, but not necessarily like our East Coast team.
Gotcha. So I'm doing that instead of going to San Francisco. I figured I would do switch gears a
Cool.
Oh,
little
great.
bit. And then I developed I'm waiting for it to drop. I'm just starting to do some CEUs. So one is for Study Notes ABA.
Awesome.
Nice.
Um so that's the work I'm trying to do. Like um I am independent with it right now. I'm helping people with like different research projects and stuff, but really what I'm trying to do is do more writing in this topic and see if somebody will bite. I'm also writing for behavior economics. They have like a
Cool.
behavior economics guide every year. So I'm going to be writing for the 2026 on misinformation, more from a behavioral economic lens.
That's amazing.
So yeah, I'm doing that. I know I keep forgetting. I'm really bad at like promoting myself or like I feel I'm never done. Like I think it's
Yeah.
probably the ADHD part of my brain that I'll get something, but then I'm never done. Like I'm always trying to see what more can be done in this topic. And I feel like I said, like I threw out so many different aspects of what goes into misinformation. So I'd like to start working on picking a few and fleshing it out.
Mhm.
And I feel, right now because it's so cumbersome. I'm starting just to work on like more of like the behavior analytic principles that go into why we're consuming what we're consuming and how we're consuming it. I think
Yeah.
it's
Mm,
really important to start there so that people have this awareness. Because I think you know, we, you know, we want to change so much, but if we don't understand the principles behind it, we don't know where to start and what to change. So I'm really trying to just point out the behavior principles that are underneath why we, gravitate to certain news stories and why we
mm,
feel the need to engage and share and I think that's a place to start right now. I think, looking at, again, there's so many stones that need to be turned when we're talking about
Yeah.
this because
yep.
I talk about like the community ad, like Sigrid Glenn and her like the meta contingencies and interlocking behavior contingencies. But then there's also rule governed behavior and relational frame theory and derived relational responding, which, again, like we could talk about this for 8 more hours and I could drive you
Yeah.
guys crazy with that. But like, there's a reason why, we respond to certain language and to certain concepts because it's connected to so many other areas in our brain that connect specifically to our reinforcement history and to our learning history. So when we see a certain word or a certain, like, again, like not to be political, but like I feel, when people who don't live in New York, right? I'm a New Yorker, right? When people who don't live in New York see posts about New York. So my boyfriend and I, to get out of the political side of it, my boyfriend and I, we belong, even though we're New Yorkers, we belong to a lot of New York tourist pages on Facebook because we love seeing people enjoy New York.
Mm,
We just love seeing people go, oh God, this was like a dream come true. I went to New York for the first time. We went to the Statue of Liberty, blah, blah. We just love seeing those types of posts. But then you have people who are on those pages only to say I would never go to New York. It's a shithole, and
Yeah.
it's a crime-ridden shithole, right? So we're like, first of all, then why are you on this page? Because you're like a member of this page. But again, you think of like, New York, like is like people's frames of New York, right? Are connected to different things like crime and grime, maybe like just dirt and rats and subways and like so people start to make these neural connections with the New York, right?
Yeah.
And it brings out all these different responses and people's, relationships, whether they saw it on a movie or they went there when they were like 5 and or something. Same thing with like dogs, right? When you see people who are afraid of dogs. I've my big dopey dog, and like I'll see people being like terrified of dogs. Maybe when they were young, they were chased by a dog or bitten by a dog, right? So anytime they see a dog, hear about dogs, right, it opens up all these different frames. So that is something too, when people are engaging on social media, we can't see it, we can't measure it, we can't observe it. But those are things that are also that they're bringing to their interactions when they're entering this environment that
Yeah.
that there's a lot of potential for research. But I, need more people who are more really, really good at those areas to look into that. So,
Yeah.
Yeah.
but yeah, so I'm just chipping away. I'm just chipping away, just talking and trying to get the word out there so that people see the importance of this and hopefully they find me and we find each other and we can do some more work. That's my
Yeah.
ultimate goal.
Yeah.
One
So
step at a time, right?
one step at
One
a
person
time.
at a time.
Yeah.
Yeah,
One post at a time.
one post at a time. I'm enjoying talking about it. I'm enjoying finding the people that give a shit. That's
Yeah.
my first step. Yeah. So that's that.
I
Yeah.
guess as we're wrapping up, so speaking of people finding you, where can everyone find you?
I'm on LinkedIn. You can find me under Dr. Bergman Geonie. That's Geonie. Uh, if you want to find me on Instagram, I am a Dr. Dharma in heels. It was sort of an old thing. I used to be really into Buddhism and yoga. I still kind of am. But I was always saying like I'm really into like the Dharma, the teaching, but I'm kind of still
Mm.
Mhm.
superficial because I like shopping and fashion and stuff. So I'm like, it's Dharma in heels. There's a whole bunch of underscores in that. It's Dr. underscore Dharma underscore in heel, whatever. If you're really looking to find me on LinkedIn. I can give you my Instagram handle if you're really interested. You'll mostly be seeing pictures of my dog though, so
Yeah.
as you guys know.
Yeah.
Um, and that's it. I mean, like, from there, I can give you my, email, my phone number, whatever it is you want to do to keep in touch with me. But
Cool.
I'm on LinkedIn. If you message me, you guys can find me on there.
Perfect.
And I'll talk this till you're sick of hearing about it. And I'll still talk about it
Uh,
even after you're sick of hearing about it. So yeah, and I'm constantly reading. I'm constantly, just looking I have tons of books everywhere. So if anybody's ever interested in a resource or an article or something where they can just start to dive into this, I am more than happy to point you in that direction too. So
Great.
Awesome. So thank you so much for joining us today on the Gold Standard Podcast. We look forward to doing an official part 2. This was like part 1 redo. So we look forward to an official part 2 and getting to see you soon.
yay. Same
Yeah.
here, guys. All right.
Awesome. Thank you again.
Thank
Um,
you.
Check out thekarmacollection.com for stylish, ABA-inspired apparel that spreads the message of behavior science with every wear. Free shipping on orders over $120. thekarmacollection.com